Hello, I'm David.
And I'm Lucy. I always make that a question. And I'm Lucy.
Yes, are you sure?
I'm Lucy.
I'm definitely not Lucy. And welcome to Tudoriferous, the podcast examining lives in the Tudor era. And today...
Part 2, and Beaujeu, featuring the Mad War.
Oh dear. Yes, I was thinking about Anne de Beaujeu, and I'm thinking, for someone who famously never smiled, her life is essentially the setup of one of those very middle-of-the-road domestic sitcoms, isn't it? You've got the domineering dad, the younger brother who's always getting himself into scrapes, the sort of doormat sister who results in this awful brother-in-law that keeps coming around and making trouble.
Yes. Yeah, and it's set in the 70s.
Yes. There should be a laugh track here if it weren't for the fact that Anne very much not on that wavelength.
No. There'd be complete silence afterwards. We could have a complete silence track. You might get a sort of, oh, no, sorry. We don't laugh here. Well, this is going to be quite a long and complicated episode. Because I didn't think we could split the Mad War in half, since it's like Ferdinand's machinations. You have to keep going or you lose your thread. It's like riding a bicycle. If you stop pedalling, you'll fall off.
Yes, I'm not saying that this episode might get a little confusing, but Lucy did provide me with a chart of all the important people.
I did.
And several of them have the same name.
It's like the Italian wars. You just get used to them being on one side, and then the other side offers them more, and boom, they've gone. And you think, oh, God, now I've got to remember that you're on the other side. And I will be putting those cast of characters on the website for people to follow along.
Yes, that will definitely help.
Yeah.
So obviously, unless you're, driving or cooking, you have access to the website. Have a look at this. It may well help.
Yeah, I've done lots of tweaks and retweaks and re-retweaks to try and make it obvious. On my re-retweaks, I was still checking, thinking, okay, I've got to check this man. Have I put him in the right place?
Oh, no.
So, yeah, one of the problems is that the history books often refer to the rebel nobles. Mm-hmm. And in this story, there are two sets of rebel nobles. You've got the Breton rebel nobles rebelling against Duke Francis, really against his sidekick, Pierre Landais, rather than Duke Francis, as you'll hear about in his episode. Mm-hmm. And the French rebel nobles rebelling against the Beaujeux. Mm. And that is the Beaujeux, not against Charles, against the Beaujeux.
No. You're never rebelling against the king.
No, and they're not either, really, because you can separate the two between, Charles and the Beaujeux. And the Breton rebel nobles flee to France, and the French rebel nobles flee to Brittany.
And it's not helped by, still occasionally having to remind myself, these really are two separate countries at this point, and not just different bits of France.
Yes, well, it is to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've twice kicked this can down the road. I decided not to do it in Charles VIII episode, since I was focusing on his Italian campaign. And Michelle chickened out when she did Anne of Brittany on Patreon. So finally, this can has hit a brick wall and can't be kicked any further. So let's try and untangle this mess once and for all. The cast. Mm-hmm. The cause of the war, well, there are two causes. The approaching death of Duke Francis of Brittany and the lack of an obvious successor apart from a girl, and the resentment of Louis, Duke of Orleans, who felt he'd missed out on practically everything. As he really had. I mean, he had reason to complain. Yeah. I mean, Louis XI had made damn sure he missed out on everything, including children. Mm-hmm. There were two houses who had some right to the Dukedom of Brittany, so it's a bit like the Aragonese and the Angevin with Naples. And I'm not going to bother going into the ins and outs of all that, except to say that those who had some claim were the Prince of Orange, he's Duke Francis' nephew, Viscount Rohan, which automatically sounds like a villain to me, something out of Star Wars. He's the Duke's son-in-law. And if we want a villain, we've got Alain d'Albret. I couldn't work out what relation he was to Duke Francis, but he is Cesare Borgia's father-in-law. So he is the sort of father who would marry his little girl off to Cesare Borgia.
Oh, no.
No,
Oh, no.
no. And Charles VIII also had a claim, and that came courtesy of his father, who had bought the right from a countess who decided to forego her claim. She decided to forego her claim when Louis XI, the Spider King, suggested that she should. I'm sure you can't read anything into that.
So, hang on. So Viscount Rohan was Duke Francis's son-in-law, so presumably not then married to Anne of Brittany,
No.
since he... No.
There's a younger daughter. I don't know the name of the younger daughter. We only ever hear about Anne.
Ah, right. Because that family looks like it's getting very tangled already.
We're going to ignore any other people. There's Francis and his daughter Anne. We've got enough people. To avoid factions, Duke Francis had the Estates General of Brittany agree that his daughter Anne of Brittany should be his successor. I mean, it didn't really avoid factions, since now they're all queuing up to marry her. So.
Yeah. And also, I mean, surely we're at least in the era where someone could go, Henry I of England tried to get everyone to agree his daughter should succeed as well. And that didn't work that well.
No. I mean, this goes a little better. But not much.
No.
And this also went against the Treaty of Guérande in 1365 that had agreed that the duchy, quote, will not return to women as long as there are male heirs, unquote. And there unquestionably were male heirs because we just listed them.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like Matilda, they all said, yes, we'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
The run-up to war. And it's a long run-up. A very long run-up. Anne de Beaujeu heard news that some discontented Breton nobles had risen against the Duke of Brittany and failed. As we know, it wasn't the Duke, it was Monsieur Landais. But that's too complicated to go into now, so it's got its own episode.
Yes. Should we just mention, since this episode's coming out before that one, that Pierre Landais, just remind everyone, he was essentially a prime minister.
Yeah.
Essentially, a sort of low-born figure who was running the country because Duke Francis was rather ill a lot of the time.
He was. Well, you speculated that he wasn't ill. He was putting it on, but you have to, to wait for Landais' episode for those intrigues. Well, among these discontented Breton nobles, we've got the Prince of Orange and Viscount Rohan. They were now seeking asylum in France. And this was after they'd tried to abduct Pierre Landais, and it all went horribly wrong, as we will see in Landais' episode. So they were forced to run away. This could be a political minefield for the Beaujeux. If they agreed to take in the refugees, it could unite all the various factions opposing their rule. The nobles could say, well, look, she's taking the part of rebels against a natural ruler, Duke Francis. What's to stop her treating us in that fashion? Or indeed, what's to stop us treating her in that fashion? More to the point. On the other hand, Francis, as you say, was getting old and infirm, and his daughter was his only heir. What if she were to marry into a foreign power? Brittany would then be lost to France forever. At least if Anne de Beaujeu let the refugees in, she'd have some control over them, and she could assist them to be the power behind the throne and persuade them to make Anne of Brittany marry into France, namely Charles.
Yeah.
But on the third hand, if she... It's a lot of hands. This is got a Schiefer. On the third hand, if she were to interfere in Breton politics, foreign powers would feel compelled to step in, and it could trigger a war across Europe. But on the fourth hand, Brittany wouldn't tolerate interference from France, since they'd always been proudly independent of France. So this is a real dilemma for Anne. She's juggling 4 juggling balls with 4 hands. The Bretons were hoping that with a change of regime in France, their situation might be less perilous, because Louis XI had a policy of drawing other regions like Maine and Anjou into France, and Brittany had felt it was only a matter of time before he turned his attention to them. But they hoped maybe this new regime would be different. So for the first year or so of Charles's reign, the Bretons affected friendliness to France that they didn't really feel. Brittany wasn't part of the States General in France that we heard about last week, Instead of sending delegates to meet at Tours, when Charles first became king, it sent an embassy, including Pierre Landais. Because an embassy made them look more of a foreign country. Foreign countries send embassies, but vassals send delegates. However, when they realised that the Beaujeux looked to become the regents, Brittany realised that things might not be going their way. And Landais went home suddenly claiming that he feared assassination. Now, that's always quite a good move. If you claim you might be assassinated, it automatically makes the opposition look unscrupulous and violent, even if there's absolutely no evidence for it.
No.
So he was a canny one, was Landais.
Yeah.
The revolting Breton lords must have seemed to the French government to be a godsend for France's design on Brittany, but whatever Anne's ultimate intentions might be, she did not think that the hour had yet struck for precipitating a crisis. She therefore faffed a bit with Orange and Rieux, so they were left just hanging around waiting to see what she would do.
Yeah.
Well, she decided what to do, presumably. Louis of Orleans and his cohort, so that's the French rebels, planned to go to Brittany to get help for his cause. But before they could put their plans into action, Anne de Beaujeu recalled them for the king's coronation, an invitation they could hardly decline.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will come, and you will look as if you're enjoying yourself.
Yes.
But he did, apparently. He was Orleans was the life and soul of the party.
I guess he thought, well, maybe this is the only chance I'll get at having a coronation.
Yes. Charles was besotted by him, like Prince Henry and Philip the Fair.
Oh.
And if enemies of Anne de Beaujeu are to be believed, he made no secret of his boyish crush. He begged Louis to free him from his sister's control. Louis began to play with the notion that the Beaujeux might be sidelined if he could use his influence over the king. And we're pretty sure that Louis was privy to, if he had not directly planned, a plot discovered by Anne Beaujeu in September, whereby Charles was to be carried off by 3 chamberlains, and it was called the 3 Chamberlains plot. Plots always get given a name, don't they?
Yeah.
And we heard in some episode or other that Orleans planned to kidnap Charles. Now we learn that Charles would have been a very happy kidnappee.
Yes.
Just to get away from his sister. And I think that's probably worth remembering when we come to rate her. That her own brother, was happy to be kidnapped rather than stay with her. But we should also remember this was reported by Anne's detractors.
Yes. And we should also remember that the brother in question is Charles VIII.
Yes.
Someone whose grasp on realpolitik is questionable.
He'd read a lot of books on chivalry, so he was probably thinking, oh, this is an adventure. Louis gave discontented lords in France a figurehead to latch on to. If Louis and his cohorts had been successful in this, France would have been split back into its composite parts, as each of the nobles claimed back autonomy for their region. And obviously, it was in a lot of people's interest that this should happen. And so Richard III promised assistance, and Maximilian threw his hat into the ring, since he'd dearly like to get all his Burgundian territories back. So the 3 Chamberlains plot was going to be the igniting spark for this venture. Anne de Beaujeu couldn't have this. Now, this is an odd setup. I'm not entirely sure this quite hangs true for me. But anyway, she marched straight to Charles' apartments and dismissed the 3 Chamberlains there and then, accusing them of treason. Well, for a start, if they're accused of treason, they're not dismissed.
Yeah. A little more strong than that.
Yeah. Charles put up no opposition to his sister. Anne then turned to Orleans, warning him, I'm watching you, Louis. Even when you think I'm not watching you, I'm watching you. So they're all in the same room. It seems a bit bizarre. You can imagine Anne storming out and then Louis and Charles sort of looking at each other go, uh-oh.
Maybe Anne walks into the room and there's literally there's Louis and there's Charles and 3 Chamberlains holding a big bag. Yes. And Louis is saying to Charles, come on, get in.
Quick, your sister's coming. Yeah, I mean, that sounded like the end of the plot severely shrunk into space and time.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the Beaujeux, through a series of promises, began to entice the nobles to their side. They told the Duke of Lorraine that the government might look favourably on his bid for the Neapolitan throne if he sided with them. I mean, it wouldn't, but it might. And they also made treaties with the Duke of Bourbon, the Duke of Nemours, the Princess of Navarre, and Jean de Foix. So, all friends together now.
Yes.
Then they looked at ways of sidelining their foreign enemies. And it's at this point that they extended a hand of friendship to one Henry Tudor, who had just had to flee from Brittany when the news reached him that Landais was planning to hand him over to Richard III. Anne sent an embassy to Brittany, proposing that the differences between the Duke of Brittany and his subjects, the revolting Breton lords, could be referred to arbitration of the Dukes of Orléans and Bourbon. Well, Bourbon had made an alliance with the Beaujeux, but it's hard to see why she'd have chosen Orléans, unless she's just trying to enfold him into the court, make him feel welcome.
Yeah, give him a job.
Yes. And he might stop kidnapping my relatives. But it's a risky move. I mean, she knows he's not on message, really, isn't she? And she does this a few times.
Yeah, I'm going back to the sitcom. Maybe she just it's the latest zany scheme to get him out of her house. Just go on, get the brother-in-law away.
Yeah, I mean, in later years they might have sent him to the colonies, but unfortunately we haven't got one. The Parliament of Paris took out proceedings against the Duke of Brittany, declaring him a rebel of France. Which, you feel that's not really fair. It's not France.
Yes, not French.
No. She obviously had as much, or they obviously had as much trouble remembering this as you did. Well, an usher of the Parliament, who might be called Trevert, but it looks like Travers, so we'll go with Travers.
Oh, yes, with the little moustache. Clearly a butler.
He was sent to Brittany, to go and subpoena the Duke of Brittany. As soon as he entered the province, he was set upon by archers and had to seek sanctuary in a monastery. They must have been lousy archers. I mean, if he was able to seek sanctuary in a monastery rather than becoming a pincushion. Anne de Beaujeu could hardly overlook this attack on a French citizen, and her answer was to demand the surrender of Brittany to France. I mean, that's quite a draconian response to what's one incident, really. But she was conciliatory. It would be conditional. The administration of justice would not be tampered with. The ancient privileges would be protected. There would be no taxes without the consent of the provincial states. So no taxation without representation. The nobles were to continue to enjoy their privileges. The duchy was to be guarded by Bretons, and the duke's daughter was to be married with the approval of the states, as long as it was to Charles. A complicated family tree was dragged out to show that actually Charles had a right to Brittany anyway. I mean, since he had two ways of nabbing Brittany, there's either marrying the duke's daughter Anne, or proving he had a right to the province himself. Well, he was belt and braces. He was going to do both.
Yeah. Doesn't that mean you're sort of related? Shh, don't mention that.
We can sort that out with the Pope. There'll be no trouble there. Popes always say yes.
Yeah. Oh, Innocent VIII. Oh, yeah, he'll be fine.
Innocent, yeah, no.
Lob him a bit of cash.
Not surprisingly, the Bretons saw this demand of the Beaujeux as a threat, because how else were they expected to see it? And they started to mobilise their forces. Now, Anne sent Francis, Count of Dunois, to Brittany, which again, odd choice. He was openly hostile to the Beaujeux, and he would later persuade Orléans to join the Bretons. So, as a man to press the Beaujeux cause in Brittany, he seemed the last person they should have chosen. And it seems to be the case. He had been told to find out what happened to Travers, the human pincushion, but he sent a message to the Parliament of Paris saying he'd never heard of Travers and couldn't find out anything about him.
Maybe she was hoping they'd try and turn him into a pincushion.
We also implied he wasn't interested. He said, I don't want to see this man. The Parliament replied it's very peculiar that he was the only man in the country not to have heard of the incident that had so shocked everyone else. And they also told him if he'd already left Nantes, where he was going, he should go straight back there and bring Travers home. So I don't know why Beaujeu chose this man.
Yes.
Maybe they were trying to build bridges. Maybe, as you say, they were hoping he wouldn't come back. Dunois is not on the side of the Beaujeux, and he was helping the Duke of Brittany and Orleans try and extricate young Charles from the clutches of his sister. And he was trying to persuade Francis to build up his links with Richard III and Maximilian. So that's a blatant attack on France by that Frenchman there that they've just sent to represent them. I felt that Anne had more sense than that, so there must have been an underlying bit of spideriferousness that I just haven't spotted.
Well, everyone makes mistakes. I mean, it could just have been, I can't have him here any longer. Get rid of him.
Oh, no, not that too. No. Oh, God, it's too late. He's gone now.
Yeah, send Francis in France. We did.
Maximilian was very keen, although he always is very keen, isn't he? He's like a puppy. Although, I've just realised you're going to get him muddled up with Jean Galliat's.
Oh, yeah, no, don't do that.
He doesn't look like a puppy. He just acts like one. Although he had troubles at home he needed to sort out. But he always has troubles at home he needs to sort out. He was advising his diplomats in England that they should do anything they could to stop Richard III seeking a rapprochement with the Beaujeux, but should instead definitely side with the Bretons. They were to point out to Richard that if England wanted to assert its rights to great chunks of France, now was the time to do so while there's a child on the throne. But, he added, he's talking to his ambassadors here, but if the English were to point out to the diplomats that he himself had made a treaty with France and had even given them his daughter Margaret of Austria as a wife for Charles, they were to tell the English that it hadn't been his idea, that it was these pesky folk from Flanders who'd made alliances without consulting him. And these diplomats were also told that if any Breton ambassadors were to come to England, they were to be given the most cordial welcome, and it should be stressed that England, Brittany and Maximilian were all just one big happy family who'd support each other in time of need. So none of them should enter into a separate treaty, ignoring the fact that Maximilian had just entered into a separate treaty. Now, as usual, I think Maximilian is overreaching himself. He lives in a world where everyone does what he says just because he wants them to do it. So in his head, it's all happened, I think, and he's thinking, right, okay, that's that. That's that done. No, it hasn't, Maximilian. Everybody's doing it.
Again, it's why, certainly when listening to the episode, I liked him, because it's this sense of like, no, he lives in a world he's created.
Yes.
And every now and then he is reminded that isn't the real world, but he keeps forgetting it.
I think he just shuts that out. Shuts his eyes and blocks his ears and thinks about the next chapter of his novel. When everything will go right. Yes. Yeah, no, I like him. I'm sure I wouldn't if I met him in real life.
Oh, no, he'd be an absolute nightmare.
Well, the Beaujeux were worried about Burgundy, though, because Maximilian was somehow managing to turn hearts and minds away from the French. And I say somehow, but we do know how. Maximilian's chamberlain, so now that's 4 chamberlains we've got, was lavishing bribes on anyone who was anyone, while preaching that the French would wrest the Burgundian civil liberties from them, and they'd be living under a tyrannical regime. And Beaujeu counteracted by making a treaty with the Swiss, which gave her the use of Swiss mercenaries, and Scottish troops were placed on the Burgundian border, and she also had arrested those that were stirring up sedition in Burgundy, which I would have thought would ring alarm bells for those fearing French tyranny, because, I mean, there it is. Those arrested were found guilty and should have undergone the ultimate penalty, but Maximilian seized the French ambassador and threatened tit for tat if the present prisoners were executed. It's all going on in Burgundy. Yeah. Meanwhile, in Brittany, Dunois, the man whom Anne de Beaujeu had sent as government representative, had got together with Landais, and they'd issued a proclamation. Their idea was to tell people that while the Beaujeux were despots who had usurped the position of regent, Louis of Orleans had only the happiness of the French people at heart. And Anne de Beaujeu was accused of wanting to keep Charles forever in her power. And if this worked, it could be really bad for the Beaujeux, since Orléans was the next in line after Charles. Who would protect Charles with the Beaujeux gone? And Orléans next in line for the throne.
Oh dear, a Beaujeu agent snuck back in and said, I can't have power, no one can, and stabbed him.
We've got to take him out of that bag. Suffocated. Well, this accusation could well be believed, since Orléans told Parliament, through his Chancellor Le Mercier, that Anne de Beaujeu was ignoring the council. She was taxing beyond what the council had said was acceptable. She was keeping the whole control of finances entirely to herself. And the council had ruled that the king should rule through them. And Anne was completely ignoring this. She was boasting that she would keep her brothers in leading reigns and wouldn't let him rule until he was 21. Anne, Le Mercier said, had made the king's guards swear loyalty to her, and I don't know if that's as well as Charles or instead, and she got rid of all Charles's faithful servants, so she was isolating him. So seen from that point of view, Orléans not the baddie. He's not evicting the rightful regent. He's trying to get rid of a couple of tyrants. Yeah. But how much of Orléans' rant was true? Well, just enough to make these accusations dangerous for the Beaujeux. They had gone beyond the confines that the council allowed them, and they were encroaching on council territory, but perhaps not to the extent that Orléans was claiming. But it was a little disingenuous of Orléans to appear to be the voice for the protection of the council when neither he nor his cronies had ever turned up at meetings. The way the rebel lords had behaved didn't inspire much confidence in their democratic credentials, and the Duke of Brittany was hardly in a position to demand the convening of a council he hadn't bothered to send delegates to. Orléans and Dunois were hardly in a position to criticise the Beaujeux spending when they were both drawing very heavily on the public purse themselves. It's a big slanging match, really.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, yes, it seems like everyone was trying to control Charles, who A, needed a bit of controlling, and B, and was probably a more effective controller. Rightful, highly questionable. You know, control freak, maybe. Necessary?
Yeah, I mean, we saw what he went and did when she let him off those leading reins. I mean, by pure fluke, it did work.
Yes.
Which Anne must have been thinking, damn, I don't...
No, I thought he was going to learn a lesson.
He has. He's come back saying, I'm brilliant, I am. Though, fortunately for the Beaujeux, when the first president of the Parliament got up to speak, he was very polite, pointedly so. These French lords should think very carefully what they were doing. The most important thing was public peace, and what they were doing was not going the right way about maintaining public peace. And because of that, the Parliament wanted nothing to do with it. Neither did they asked the university. Well, I don't know why they asked them, but they didn't want to have anything to do with Orléans, and neither did any of the town councils. So everyone was saying, no, we'll stick with the tyrants.
Yeah.
In fact, no one seemed to believe Orléans and the Duke of Brittany's scheming. And then Charles VIII put out a notice that he found the antics of his cousin very strange, and none of it was true. He said, quote, "If we desire to have continually at our side our very dear and much-loved sister, the Dame de Beaujeu, and if we repose our entire trust in her, there is no occasion for surprise, seeing that we have no nearer relative nor dearer friend, and that it is our well-beloved brother and cousin," it shouldn't be brother and cousin, that's not healthy, Sieur de Beaujeu, "in preference to all others, that our late father expressly entrusted the care and custody of our person," unquote. So if she's good enough for Dad, she's good enough for me.
Yeah. Is there even the slightest chance Charles actually wrote that?
I wouldn't think so. No, I think actually Anne has laid it on too thick with a trowel there. I want nobody else. Just want her. Anne de Beaujeu counteracted, she's always counteracting, by occupying the Duchy of Orléans in Louis's absence and inciting the Flemish against Maximilian. I don't know how necessary that is, because he was pretty good at inciting them himself. She also upped her support for Henry Tudor. You want troops to help you invade? We can give you troops. Orleans' actual physical help, rather than vague offers of help that came from foreign powers, were Francis of Brittany, René of Lorraine, which is odd because Anne had already bought him off, but anyway, he's changed sides again. Alain d'Albret, we don't like him. The Prince of Orange, the Count of Angoulême, and Philippe de Comines.
Oh.
Yeah, and Landais. And we're doing a cameo on Comines. I'm quite intrigued to work out how a man sent as an embassy from France to Brittany is suddenly siding with the Bretons, but he's not the first.
Yeah.
And it won't be the first time he changed sides.
Oh, no.
Anne stripped both Orléans and Dunois of various titles, which she redistributed elsewhere. She then stationed troops in Normandy to cut communications between Orléans and the Duke of Brittany. So Orléans is now cut off from his cronies, and so was forced to make submission to the French government. Landais wanted to get his own back on the rebel Breton lords, but they had the backing of the rest of France now. Landais' backing was falling apart, as we'll see in his cameo.
Mm-hmm.
And then Landais was arrested by a pro-French faction in Brittany. He was tortured, and so, needless to say, confessed to everything, and then hanged.
Yeah.
But again, more of that in his cameo.
Oh, good.
Yes. Anyone would think you didn't like a good hanging. Following Landais' death, as so often happened, all his policies were reversed. Although this did make things difficult for his opponents, who had triumphed with the help of Anne de Beaujeu. They had to remain friendly to France, and yet they couldn't afford to alienate colleagues of Landais who were still in power. So the only way of reconciling the two sides was literally to reconcile the two sides, to bring together Duke Francis and Charles VIII. And this led to the Treaty of Beaujeu, which promised perpetual peace.
Oh, how lovely.
So that's that. I hope you enjoy.
Yes, I'm just thinking, and that's the lead up to the Mad War.
Each side pledged to aid each other against their enemies, which must have been tricky given that Brittany's friends were Spain, England and Maximilian, and France's enemies were Spain, England and Maximilian.
Yeah.
This was a great help to Beaujeu's government, because Landais' execution had pulled the rug out from under Orleans' feet. He'd got together with Dunois, still hoping for help from Richard III and Maximilian, who was promising to invade Picardy. The hope was to make it impossible for the French government to protect Picardy and to invade Brittany at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was while Orleans was organising all of this that he heard of this treaty between Brittany and France and the perpetual peace.
Oh.
And that was the last thing he wanted.
Yes.
Sounds awful. Anne saw her chance and accompanied her troops to the Breton border. Orleans' team broke up. Alain d'Albret withdrew, and Charles of Angoulême changed sides with the offer of marriage with Pierre de Beaujeu's niece Louise of Savoy. Anne's very good at spotting what people really want rather than what they say they want. And then she thinks he doesn't really want to be on the Breton side, does he? He wants to marry somebody high up. And then they offer this, and he goes, "Oh, great, yeah, fine,
Yeah. Just live off these lands. Thank you very much.
I'm done, thank you." In the summer of 1485, Orleans issued his proclamation condemning the government's financial policy, and this time he was joined by Pierre Beaujeu's brother, Jean, Constable of Bourbon, as well as Dunois, Angoulême, and all the other happy crew. Now, why did Pierre de Beaujeu's brother decide to change sides?
Oh, no, she's got another awful brother-in-law now.
This one is. I mean, surely he had everything. He was insanely rich. He was in with the court. There seemed to be nothing he could possibly want. Mm-hmm. It seems he was in a strop because he hadn't been asked to lead the troops heading for Picardy against Maximilian.
Oh,
If I can't lead troops, I'm going over to the enemy.
Oh.
And he wondered why they hadn't let him lead troops. I mean, But he was talked round by Anne de Beaujeu to joining her again. I mean, that does seem to be one of her gifts. Sort of sweet-talking, stroppy child men.
Yeah.
I got rather sidetracked finding out about Jean de Bourbon by the names of his illegitimate children.
Uh-huh.
They were Charles, bastard of Bourbon.
Okay.
Mathieu, the great bastard of Bourbon. Hector, bastard of Bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, bastard of Bourbon. Marie, bastard of Bourbon. And Marguerite, bastard of Bourbon. Although she was later legitimised, I don't know why she was singled out.
Oh. I like this one. Hang on. Why? What makes Mathieu the great bastard?
I've no idea. I don't know, because he's not the oldest. I think Charles is probably the oldest. I don't know. Perhaps he's better at being a bastard than the rest of them. Perhaps he's a doubly bastard. Neither of his parents are the one that are meant to be.
Oh, yes.
I don't know.
It's a good job that historical contexts were allowed to keep on using that word without putting the explicit tag on. Otherwise.
But I did I looked up on Wikipedia about Jean de Bourbon just to find out, I thought, what are you up to? Why are you changing sides? And there's, the whole list with Bastard of Bourbon written next to them, all of them.
We can see very clearly what he was up to.
Yes, that's true. The Beaujeux had recently sent an army of 4,000 to help Henry Tudor in England, but Charles VIII had still managed to besiege Orléans and Dunois. So obviously Orléans must be in Brittany at this time. You never know where he is. You've got to work out from people's reaction to whether he's in France or Brittany, because he seems to move from one to the other.
Oh, that does help, because when you said besiege Orléans, I thought you meant the place, not the person.
No, I changed all the Louis, or nearly all the Louis, to Orléans, because I thought, well, we've got Louis XI as well. But in fact, it's just as confusing calling him Orléans. The Second League of the Public Weal was defeated by Anne with an army of 12,000 men, led by Louis de la Tremoille. Again, cameo episode.
Ah, yes. The loyal one.
The loyal one, yeah. Yes, that's what he's got on his T-shirt. I'm the loyal one. I don't know why it was considered so amazing they managed to muster two armies, one against Orléans and one to help Henry Tudor. We saw the calibre of troops they sent over with Henry. Yeah. I mean, they're very much the also-rans.
Yes.
To make matters worse for Orléans, we're in August 1485. So what has just happened?
The Battle of Bosworth.
Orléans would have been horrified to discover that the man who was now King of England was the same one who'd been given protection by the court of Anne de Beaujeu when he'd had to flee Brittany. Orléans was forced to capitulate a second time, so he's been beaten twice by Anne. I think we're seeing the difference in strategy here, in as much as one of them has won.
Yeah.
After the fall of Landais, Brittany was effectively being ruled by Rieux and Orange, and it wasn't that they were friends of Anne Beaujeu, but unlike Landais, they were prepared to pretend to be friends under the umbrella of the Treaty of Bruges and that perpetual peace.
Oh, perpetual peace.
But the tensions were still there. The history of the two countries and the problem of the succession, which was still amounting to who was going to marry Anne of Brittany, threatened to scupper the perpetual peace.
Yeah.
Maximilian hadn't signed the Treaty of Bourges and the perpetual peace, and so he suddenly attacked Terouanne.
Ah.
I think he thinks, oh, God, it's boring on Sundays, isn't it? What can I do?
This chapter just isn't... It needs something more.
Yes. Well, Anne de Beaujeu, with her customary speed, dispatched troops to check Maximilian's advance. Well, she didn't really need to hurry, however. He'd already had to abandon the campaign since, surprise, surprise, soldiers hadn't been paid and they were mutinying. So Maximilian had failed on 2 counts. He hadn't achieved his immediate military goals, and he hadn't been able to rally others to the wider goal of ousting the Beaujeux, because no one else had joined in. All that talk about, okay, you go over there, you take this, I'll take Burgundy, look, Richard, you can take great big chunks of France while there's a little boy. No, none of the rest had done it.
Busy.
I'm dead.
Yes.
Well, in fact, it had strengthened opinion in favour of Anne de Beaujeu, because most countries don't like being attacked by foreigners, and they tend to stick with the leader that's the same nationality as them.
Yeah.
Although, I don't think this is how it's going to play out in his autobiography, is it? It's going to read very differently.
More dragons, I feel.
The Duke of Brittany had been relying on Maximilian and the Duke of Bourbon, especially since he didn't know which way Henry VII would go. And they both let him down, one through incompetence and one through stroppiness. And that is the calibre of the Duke Francis' allies, really, at this point. The problem the Duke of Brittany and the Duke of Orleans had was that their French noble colleagues were not there as adherents to a cause. Their friendship was dependent on what they could get out of it. So if the other side offered more, they changed sides. Add to that the fact that the interests of these noble lords were often in conflict, and you could see it was going to be very difficult for Louis and the Duke of Brittany to keep the coalition together. For a start, several of them, Maximilian, Orleans, d'Albret and Orange, to name but a few, were vying for the hand of Anne of Brittany.
Oh, no. Look, only 2 kings can marry Anne of Brittany.
Well, they were terrified she'd find herself married to Charles VIII, but they were even more terrified that she'd marry one of the others in this group. Orleans was petitioning Rome for a dissolution of his marriage to poor Jeanne, to leave his path clear to marrying Anne of Brittany. I have to keep calling her Anne of Brittany and Anne de Beaujeu because everyone's called Anne.
Yeah.
He must have been fuming when he realised that Maximilian was in the running too, and that the Duke of Brittany favoured the suit of Maximilian. I'm not sure why he would do such a bizarre thing, but he does. Dunois and the French princes preferred Orleans, so there'd inevitably be a standoff. D'Albret's bid was favoured by Rieux and others who didn't want to see the role of loving hubby leaving the borders of Brittany. I mean, it would make sense for her to marry another Breton.
Yeah.
You just don't want her marrying that one because he's awful.
Yeah.
And he's awful. Anne of Brittany is a little girl, and she really disliked him. She'd come across... Well, nobody likes him. But, I mean, she certainly didn't want to be married to him.
No.
Anne de Beaujeu decided to follow the divide and rule tactic that was her party piece, targeting individual members of the coalition and picking them off one by one. Starting with Orleans, whom they'd heard was planning to head back to Brittany, so presumably he was in France. I don't know how he's able to move back and forth so easily, because, I mean, we're not officially at war at the moment. I mean, obviously there's perpetual peace, so I didn't need to say at the moment, because there's perpetual peace. She sent the marshal to sound him out and to bring him back by persuasion or force. And Orleans assured the marshal of his lifelong devotion. He had no intention whatsoever of escaping to Brittany. Heaven forfend.
No.
And then he was heading to Brittany as fast as his little legs would carry him.
Naturally.
Of course, yeah. Did they not understand that lying was generally considered not a good thing? It was discovered that some people within the court had been in communication with him, and the bishops of Montauban and Périgueux were locked in a fortress, and Philippe de Comines was confined in one of Louis XI's metal cages.
Oh.
Again, can't wait to do the cameo on him.
Yeah.
Others in the conspiracy were picked off by Anne de Beaujeu's quick decisions and lightning-fast attacks. So Dunois and Orleans were beginning to feel isolated. But Dunois still had faith in Maximilian. We won't be doing a cameo on Dunois because he sounds like an idiot.
Yes. Don't want to spend any more time with this man.
No. So anyone who has faith in Maximilian, nope, they don't get a cameo. Orleans wasn't doing anything, despite Dunois' frequent requests that he could just get on with it. because the plotters now realised that it was all falling to pieces and they had to save their own skins. And Dunois, he's in an unfortunate position. I mean, he only went over there to get Travers back, and he seems to have started a war.
Yeah.
And he's on the wrong side. And de Beaujeu took the king on campaign, since as soon as the king appeared, the conspiracies melted away. So it's similar to the War of the Roses, when all that was needed to send the men scurrying away from the rebel side was the sight of Henry VI in the field. When it suddenly dawned on them, oh God, are we committing treason here?
Yes.
And young Charles was having a whale of a time, since, whenever he appeared, there was instant victory. That's probably why he thought he could get away with it in Italy. I thought, I can't lose.
Yeah.
He must have found it quite easy to convince himself it was all he's doing.
Yeah.
There was a change in Breton politics. Now that Orange, Dunois and Orléans were all back in Brittany, Duke Francis was beginning to rely on them. This caused discontent among the Breton nobles, who felt that they were being shoved out in favour of the French ones.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Bretons could foresee that the existence of the French rebels in Brittany would bring down the opprobrium of France on them, which they could well do without. This is still the run-up, by the way.
Oh my lord! By the way, I was just because I was getting very confused with Orange, and I am only going off Wikipedia for this, but he seems to have been. Oh no, hang on, am I getting? I think I've got a son-in-law mixed up with a nephew somewhere. Don't worry, I can just ignore that.
It doesn't help. I mean, Orange is down towards the south of France, isn't it? Whereas he's after the Breton crown or dukedom.
Yeah, or is it Rohan? Oh, I was getting mixed up with Rohan because I was trying to work out how he could be Duke Francis' son-in-law, even though Anne was the oldest and still a child at this point. It was just making me really confused.
Gosh, that is confusing.
Yes.
Oh,
I'll keep on looking this up.
An older one that's died? I don't know. I mean, I freely admit I found this immensely confusing. And I thought I'd managed to get rid of all the gremlins from it, but obviously not. Yeah, no, you're right. There's a problem there.
Never mind. Some relation.
Yeah.
Some relation.
Anne de Beaujeu, not an idiot. She could see that in Brittany she now had two factions of enemies, the French rebels and the Breton nobles. So it was really helping Anne that they both loathed each other. So time for a bit more divide and rule politics. And this is sort of, they're handing this to her on a plate, really, aren't they? They're saying, you know what you're really good at? Well, here you go. Have a go at this. She sent envoys to Brittany to tell them that she didn't want war. Far from it. She wants perpetual peace. Well, all she wanted, really, was the expulsion of the French rebels. Anne said that ideally the Bretons would do this themselves. But if they needed any help from the king and his army, they would be happy to help. Mm-hmm. This rang alarm bells with some in Brittany. What if they called the king in to help expel the rebels and he just took over Brittany? They got around this by setting stipulations for the king to follow. There would be a limit to the number of troops he could bring into the country, no more than 6,000. He was not to make any claim on Brittany. He would not make war on Duke Francis. His troops would commit no violence on Breton inhabitants, and he should leave when he'd got the French rebels. Only on these terms would the Bretons agree to join with the French to evict the French rebels.
So you've got all those conditions, have you? Good. Yes. Now, okay, army, you can come in.
Yes.
And you'll definitely stick to all
Well,
those
I
conditions.
wondered whether he had expected the king to observe these stipulations. There were no sanctions to make him do so. Was he just creating a sort of get-out clause if it all went wrong, so he could say, well, it wasn't us, it was the king, he didn't play the game.
Yeah.
And when the king crossed into Breton territory, he had not 6,000 men, but 15,000. They headed straight for the town of Ploermel. The Bretons were quick to recognise that if the French took Ploermel, they would effectively cut Brittany in half, isolating Duke Francis. The French rebels organised a retaliation because they were the ones who'd suffer most if the French were successful.
Mm-hmm.
Since if the king were successful, it was their extradition that the French were ostensibly after. Ostensibly. Mm-hmm. Orléans, in particular, managed to get an army of 16,000 infantrymen and 6,000 cavalry, although most were raw recruits. And on top of that, they had been recruited by Duke Francis. But when they discovered they were going to be fighting for French rebels, many of them said that wasn't what they'd signed up for. They were Bretons, they didn't fight for Frenchmen. And in fact, it only took a few hours for this army just to dissolve away, leaving Ploermel to fall into the hands of the French king. Huh. And this is really the start of the Breton War as opposed to the Mad Wars. So all of that has been the run-up to the main event. Whew. This war can be split into 4 campaigns. 1487, campaign number 1. As we said, as the French stormed through Brittany, the Breton army lost hope and fell apart until there were only 4,000 of them left. Duke Francis fled to Nantes. The French then laid siege to Nantes, and it was a protracted siege thanks to the defence the Bretons put up. And a still small voice pointed out that the king really shouldn't have besieged the city anyway. He'd been told not to take any cities or harm any of the inhabitants. It was almost as if he wasn't taking this treaty seriously. Charles had the added problem that his invasion was bolstering Breton patriotism. So more people were flocking to Duke Francis, and several set about ravaging the estates of those who'd stood with the French rebels, which sounds like an excuse to me.
Yeah.
But on the whole, the Breton troops did very badly against the French, and they weren't getting a lot of help from their allies. Henry VII offered aid, but did nothing about it, as usual.
Yeah.
Maximilian sent men to Saint-Malo, but he had his own problems. And even when Maximilian's men were deployed in battle, they suffered terrible losses, and in effect, as an army, they ceased to exist. And in fact, as people, many of them ceased to exist.
Oh, yeah.
Mm. Meanwhile, in Nantes, Orléans was doing all he could do to repel the French, so he's there too. But it was not his efforts that broke the siege. When the good folk of northern Brittany heard that Duke Francis and his daughter Anne, so everyone's there, were actually under fire, they rose up in such numbers that it was said that they drank streams dry as they marched past. So this is not just nobles and soldiers, but, masses of peasants.
Mm.
They were able to get to Nantes unopposed, and the French were forced to give up the siege just from the sheer force of numbers on the Breton side.
Yeah.
And the French marched away.
Never to come... Oh, no, wait.
Yeah, the perpetual peace thing is... it's all in the past. Well, this was a blow to Anne de Beaujeu's prestige, and she knew it. She made Charles release a statement that they had never really wanted to besiege Nantes. They'd only stopped there because there was no army to fight in the countryside, and they had to pass the time somehow. They didn't give up. In no way did they give up. No. He then went on to say that they were doing really well, and they'd lost no artillery and equipment despite the size of the Breton army. So it's obvious that these are Anne de Beaujeu's words he's spouting, and everyone knew it. But it's not much of a claim. Anyway, we didn't lose any guns in the turmoil as we retreated.
Yeah. It's one of those... Yeah, that's a highly specific one, isn't it? We lost no guns. What about the cavalry? We lost no guns. and infantry, not a single gun.
Well, we didn't actually fire any guns. However, when the fighting season closed, the French had enough Breton towns and fortresses to create a ring around Duke Francis. So it's hard to see how Brittany would survive this for long. Mm. An embassy was sent to France to see if they could come to some accommodation, but the French didn't really see why they should. I mean, they're winning. Mm. You don't start negotiating when you've just started to win. You carry on and you win properly. And then Rieux waded in. Now all right, you can look on the list. Who's Rieux?
Ah, yes, Rieux, yes. Ah, yes, so he's a commander of the Breton army, and he had guarded Henry VII when Henry was a guest at the Elven Tower. I have to say, with Viscount Rohan and the Elven Tower, we are getting a bit Tolkien here.
And actually, if you look at the Elven Tower, it does look quite... you could imagine it somewhere in Mordor. He addressed Charles, this is Rieux, telling him that the French rebels would leave Brittany if they were allowed to retire to their estates peacefully. And this being the case, Charles had no reason to carry on molesting Duke Francis, since the French would have got what they wanted. And he also reminded Charles that he hadn't signed that treaty promising he wouldn't invade Brittany and attack its inhabitants. And he told Charles that if he didn't pull out of Brittany, Rieux would have to rethink their friendship. I mean, that's telling him.
Yes. To be fair, that might work on Charles.
It might
it's
do,
just that Charles isn't really in control.
No. Well, Anne de Beaujeu replied that the king had no friends. I mean, that's an interesting statement for a sister to make about her brother. She told Rieux that they were in too deep with Brittany now to turn back. Well. 1488, campaign number 2. In January of this year, Orléans and Brittany as a whole were declared rebels by the Parliament of Paris. Brittany had been thought of before as rebellious vassals. Now France had upped the ante and declared they were subjects guilty of high treason.
Ooh.
Yeah. And that's just for fighting back, fighting the French army. Orléans was able to retake some of the towns France had managed to regain, which just sounds a horrendous few months for those towns.
Oh, no.
Brittany had the financial help of Ferdinand and Isabella, who funded Alain d'Albret so he could muster 5,000 men. I wonder if Cesare was anything to do with those negotiations.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. And also explain why, of all people, the normally pretty savvy Ferdinand and Isabella are backing Alain d'Albret.
Yes. Yeah, that's why it just suddenly occurred to me that, I mean, you wouldn't talk to him direct, would you? Because apparently he's awful. So, but the idea of talking via Cesare sounds just as bad. Anyway.
I do like the way you've described him in the list. By all accounts, he was a violent, uncouth, and thoroughly unpleasant man.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think you could add about to the power of 10 for all of those things.
No.
Maximilian managed to send 1,500, which wasn't bad going, since he was having trouble with Matthias Corvinus.
Oh.
Henry VII got involved. He was in a dilemma, as we know, because he owed the French a lot for their help in getting him on the throne in the first place. But that didn't mean he wanted them owning the whole of the North Coast.
No.
He sent envoys, Sir Richard Edgecombe to Brittany, that's their hat-in-the-river man, and Sir Christopher Urswick to France. And both received rather frosty receptions from them.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Anne de Beaujeu was busy assembling troops ready for the reopening of the fighting season. And it was generally believed in France that the Breton army was a ragtag assembly of peasants who would leg it at the first intimation of danger. Louis de la Tremoille wasn't so sure, and having looked at him, I'd probably go with his estimations of everything. I mean, he made a few mistakes, but most of the time he was pretty much on the ball. He was afraid the French were underestimating them. Anne de Beaujeu got impatient with him. But he didn't think the French forces were ready. He thought it was probably best just taking garrisons along the Breton border.
Yeah, I mean, for the dawn of time, large powers have always underestimated the fighting force of people defending their homes.
Yeah, that makes the world of difference, doesn't it? For a start, they know the terrain, they haven't got so far to come, and they've got a lot more to lose.
Yes.
Maximilian was not available to help the Bretons, incidentally, since it was 1488, and he was currently imprisoned in that spice depot in Bruges, along with his poor Chester.
That's the one sentence I always have to say if I want to sell someone on that episode. This is when the almost, not quite yet, Holy Roman Emperor spent 6 months locked in a spice cupboard. What?
Yes, I mean, I remember Michelle saying, "Oh, at least it smelt nice," but apparently not. It was just too much. I expect his eyes were running all the time. Yeah, it was apparently quite overpowering.
Oh.
More worrying for the French was that d'Albret had landed in Campe with 4,000 to 5,000 men that he'd recruited in the south of France. He went to Ferdinand of Aragon to get troops, but Ferdinand, I think, must have given him money and said, here's some money, go and find some troops. He hadn't given him troops. I don't know whether he's, just got other things to do with his soldiers or whether he's following the same sort of line that Henry did. Yeah. I'm on your side, but I don't think we need to make it official, just in case.
This money could have come from anywhere.
Yes. But if Charles VIII is to be believed, and Anne de Beaujeu was pretty good at spin, so he's not necessarily to be believed, d'Albret was immediately besieged by the French and then told Charles that he'd seen the error of his ways and would from then on be a good Frenchman.
Well, Alain, we'll settle for be a Frenchman. Good is clearly beyond you.
And then Charles complained that although they'd forgiven d'Albret, he had repaid their kindness with treachery and sneaked off to Nantes to join Duke Francis. I'm amazed Charles was surprised about this. I mean, even his own side had nothing good to say about d'Albret. May 1488, a Breton embassy went to France to negotiate a truce. And again, this put Anne de Beaujeu in a difficult position. There were many in France who had sympathy with the Bretons, and with Orleans in particular, and she couldn't afford to alienate them. And yet she didn't want a truce. She wanted totally to subsume Brittany into France. But also she couldn't afford to show Brittany's allies that's what she had in mind. I'd have thought it was fairly obvious that's what they had in mind, but that's not their official position at the moment. I mean, for a start, they've claimed just popping in to get the French rebels. Well, I don't think anyone believes that one anymore.
Yeah.
But she's thinking about the foreign supporters of Brittany. I mean, Henry VII might be lukewarm in his attitude to Brittany, but that might not be the case if he had evidence of France's plans.
Yeah.
So Anne pretended that she was interested in a treaty, and yet she filibustered. But then so did the Bretons. They kept demanding one truce after another, but there was no real negotiation. So I think everyone's waiting to see what happens before they tie themselves to a truce.
Yeah.
In the end, Charles wrote to his commander-in-chief, quote, "Make war as vigorously as you can and leave them no leisure to execute repairs. Lay in provisions and make useful preparations," unquote. So, yeah, I think it's...
Yeah.
So what happened to that perpetual peace? The French side was led by La Tremoille, who seemed to be quite the human dynamo. He took city after city until Duke Francis was forced to seek a truce, and at this point it wasn't likely to be advantageous to Brittany.
No.
He was in Rennes, which I'm sure was very strategical, but it does sound a little bit like hiding.
Yeah.
The truce favoured the French, which was fair enough. They were winning. The Breton soldiers / peasants went home, while the French troops remained on the border in a very menacing way. And I don't think La Tremoille really wanted the truce, since as soon as the ceasefire time was over, he was ready. He was back on his horse, back in his armour.
Yeah.
And he swept in before the Bretons had chance to mobilise their peasants. He took Fougères and then went on to Dinan. Meanwhile, the Breton general John de Rieux tried to take back Fougères. It sounds as if Rieux is sort of following de la Tremoille, taking back the places that Tremoille had. God, it's just one of those grim wars where a city is just thrown from one person to another.
No one's got enough people to hold on to anywhere, so it's just...
Yeah, you can't leave garrisons. Maybe this is what Charles was thinking about when he came back up through Italy. And he ended up, by the time they got to the Battle of Fonovo, they had hardly any people left because they'd left so many in garrisons. Maybe he was remembering this.
Yeah.
La Tremoille decided to bypass Rennes, where Duke Francis was hanging out. And I think that's quite a good move, because Francis has effectively locked himself away in Rennes. I mean, just leave him there.
Yeah.
While he's in there, but he can't put up a fight. Go on and take all the other cities.
Yes. Congratulations, you're now the Duke of Rennes. Possibly just the Duke of that building, actually.
La Tremoille went on to take Saint-Malo. And if you go there even today, you can see it's still got some pretty hefty walls. Have you ever been to Saint-Malo?
No,
It's
afraid not.
very castle-y.
Oh, let's have a look.
The Bretons had moved their treasures to Saint-Malo, believing it to be impregnable. And it probably would have been impregnable. I mean, if you look at it,
Yeah.
a picture of it. It's
Yes.
quite chunky.
Oh wow, yeah, okay. It's sort of on an isthmus, and it still looks like the entire place is a castle.
Yes.
It's actually quite impressive.
Yes, I like Saint-Malo. It just had a nice, I don't know, very medieval feel to it. Yeah, they probably would. Yeah, if you've seen, it would have been impregnable. But when the French troops arrived there, the garrison were prepared to fight, but the townsfolk said, "No, I don't want to be starved out in a siege."
Yeah.
And they persuaded the garrison to surrender. And the terms of the surrender meant the garrison had to march out of the city unarmed, and that the contents of the city, including the Breton treasure, was forfeited to de la Tremoille.
Oh.
And Brittany could do with that.
Yes.
Really could do with that treasure. La Tremoille attacked Fougères. That's the third time, or possibly even the fourth.
Oh.
It was one of the strongest places in Brittany, but it was powerless to withstand the fire of the French guns. One of the reasons they weren't ready to defend Fougères was that the Breton nobles had frittered time away that they should have taken up working out how to defend the place with petty jealousies based on the question of Anne of Brittany's marriage. And there was a difference of opinion regarding military tactics. Rieux was all for taking his time. OK, we might have lost Fougères, but we could still keep Rennes, and they would have a base from which to move out. I mean, it's the lowest common denominator, isn't it?
Yes.
We could still keep one city in the entire country. I mean, it's quite good advice, but the greatest fear was that if the Breton army were idle, the men would desert in droves. And when the fighting season started up again, there'd be no one to fight.
Oh, yeah.
And the Breton army itself was hampered by infighting. On the 24th of July 1488, there was a disturbance amongst the troops. The French princes believed that Rieux and d'Albret were inciting the men to attack them. And you could see why they'd be worried. Both Rieux and d'Albret had a history of changing sides. The Breton side accused the French princes of intending to save their own skins by selling the Bretons to the French. So I think they've all suddenly spotted that the people they're trapped in Rennes with haven't necessarily got their best intentions at heart.
I suppose all the trouble is that this is all revolving around Duke Francis, who is too ill to do anything. If they had someone who was undisputably leading them,
Yes.
that would be...
I mean, maybe Rieux. I mean, he seems to be, the one stepping up. But the loss of Fougères galvanised the Bretons into doing something, and they marched to Saint-Aubin du Cormier, a small place held by the French. And if anyone knows anything about the Breton Wars, they will know the name Saint-Aubin du Cormier.
Should we be playing ominous music leading up to this?
I mean, it sounds very idyllic. There was help from another quarter at this time. A certain toothless Englishman turned up with 700 to 800 men, smuggled across the Channel without Henry knowing it. He didn't know, supposedly. I don't think the French believed for 1 second Henry was ignorant about what Edward Woodville was up to. But they thought that with that puny number of soldiers, Henry's resolve to help Brittany could surely not be very strong.
No.
If he'd been really serious, he'd have turned a blind eye to Woodville sneaking many more men across the Channel. Rieux was in the vanguard with Edward Woodville's men under him. The centre was commanded by Alain d'Albret. To confuse the enemy about how many English troops had turned up and to make it look as if there were more, 1,700 Bretons were dressed in coats carrying the Red Cross of St. George. And this made it look as if Henry had shown rather more interest than he had.
Yeah.
Henry was very wary of siding too obviously with the Bretons because Anne de Beaujeu had helped him when he was a pretender to the English throne. What will prevent her from helping another pretender to topple Henry?
Because Henry really gets the fact that she was only helped him because he could destabilise England. He's under no illusions that she actually likes him.
Oh, yes. And he's just gone through the whole Lambert Simnel thing.
Yes.
He suddenly thought, oh, this is what it's like. The two sides came across each other accidentally. De la Tremoille knew that the Breton army was in the area, but had no idea how close they were, until they emerged from a wood and found them there in battle formation right in front of him. If the Bretons had attacked straight away, they'd almost certainly have won. Rieux was all for getting on with it, but D'Albret was faffing about with his battle formation, so they lost the element of surprise. I mean, we don't want to go into a blow-by-blow account of the battle. No. It's all very sad. Suffice to say, the French said they lost 1,500 men. Always 1,500 men if you're on the winning side. The Bretons lost 6,000, including Edward Woodville, and all those English and those poor Bretons who'd been talked into wearing the Cross of St. George. It was a complete rout. The Breton army effectively ceased to exist. And it was all over. This episode's not all over, I warn you.
No. But I will say that if you're thinking, oh, I wanted much, much more about battles, then wait for the cameo episode on Louis de la Tremoille.
You'll get battles then.
Subtitle, A Life in 10 Battles.
Henry, seeing that English blood had been spilt, rather belatedly decided to seek revenge on France and protect Brittany. Parliament raised £100,000 for the venture, partly using the Mortons / Foxes / Nobody's fork.
The fork, yes.
However, the Bretons would have to play the brunt of it. I mean, Henry's grateful to Brittany, but, he's not that grateful.
No.
Both Orléans and Orange were arrested. When Orange had realised that it was all over, he'd thrown himself on the ground and played dead. But sadly for him, it hadn't worked. Although if they had thought he was dead, they'd have probably tried to take his teeth out, wouldn't they?
Yes.
La Tremoille invited his prisoners for dinner. But at the end of the meal, he said to them, quote, "As for you gentlemen who have been false to your king and country, you must now prepare for the death, which is the most meet punishment for your offence," unquote. Anyway, pudding, anyone? Why did he invite them for dinner?
It's very, very different. Mind you, I remember that Richard III invited Earl Rivers and
yes, he took them to the
Richard
pub,
Grey
didn't he?
for dinner, and then executed them.
Yes. Perhaps it's the norm. So, I mean, you wouldn't eat much, would you, if you were thinking?
Maybe that's why he didn't tell them till after the dinner. Just, well, I've made it now. I mean, it would be a shame if they couldn't eat it.
Yeah, don't let it get cold. Come on. The Bretons were forced to sue for peace. But again, Anne de Beaujeu didn't want peace. She hadn't fought this war to get some half-hearted truce. She wanted to carry on until Brittany was well and truly part of France. I mean, you'd think that they were there by now, but apparently not. This argument was argued against by the Chancellor of France, who said that the conquest of Brittany was easy, but, he said, no one had paused to consider whether it was just. And this is coming from the Chancellor of France.
Oh.
I mean, Anne probably just gave him that look.
Yeah.
But Charles was swayed by the Chancellor's arguments to such an extent that when Dunois arrived in court to negotiate their surrender, Charles told them he'd never wanted this war and was not responsible for it. It had been begun by provocation by Francis and the rebel princes. Charles said that all he'd been doing was defending France. But Leaving the vengeance to God, he would tell his counsellors to negotiate peace.
Yeah. That's my counsellors, Anne. My counsellors. Yes, dear, they're your counsellors.
Right. Is it time for bed? Right, okay, I'll sort this out, don't you worry. A few weeks later, Duke Francis died. I mean, blimey, it's been on the cards for long enough, hasn't it? And Anne became Duchess of Brittany. 1489, campaign number 3. I mean, you would have thought they wouldn't need it, but they do. Henry offered to act as mediator. The trouble is, you've got all these foreign supporters. So now...
Didn't you just say the Breton army ceased to exist and there's 2 more campaigns?
Yes.
Are they fighting ghosts? What's going
They're
on?
fighting foreigners. Because now Henry sort of suddenly thought, oh my God, they've actually won. We can't let the French have Brittany because we won't have anywhere, apart from Calais, we won't have any foothold in northern France. So, yeah, he's suddenly upped the ante. He says he's offered to act as mediator, which he could do since he wasn't officially on either side. Mind you, he also sent 6,000 troops to Brittany. But, Anne of Brittany was going to have to pay for them.
Yes.
They were mercenaries, so it meant he wasn't officially sending troops. It's a fine distinction. That's not the English army. They are English.
Yes.
Their general was the ever-busy Giles Lord Dobney.
Hey.
Yeah. And this is when he got the soldiers out of storage at the garrison of Guisnes, and he had to break into the fortress of Dixmude, up to his armpits in fortitude. I mean, he did very well and was able to drag the spoils back to Calais. It's as if Henry sends these people out and says, now don't come back until you've made a profit. I think that's what his son didn't quite understand. Maximilian had signed a truce with France. He hadn't got time for Brittany with all his other commitments. The French, with backing of Pope Innocent, tried to persuade Henry over to their side. We got Maximilian. Come on, Henners, get over here. Henry entered the negotiations because it didn't do to upset the Pope, but he knew he could never side with the French. The backlash back home would have been huge.
Yeah.
I mean, we just had 100 years of it.
Yes.
Giovanni Gigli,
Hey.
our gang's here. He wrote to Pope Innocent saying, quote, King Henry is compelled at present to defend the Breton interests for the defence of his own kingdom, the affairs of Brittany being so bound up with those of England that the latter are necessarily endangered by the Breton catastrophe. He has sent ambassadors to the King of the French for peace, and that be effected, all will be well. But if not, he has determined to defend Brittany and the orphan duchess with all his might, unquote. So there's fighting talk from Henry. I'm not sure how much of that Gigli was meant to say, or whether he's just sort of blown the gaff a bit about Henry being on the side. I mean, he's claiming to be sort of neutral. And Gigli's just saying, no, he's going to fight for Brittany. But Henry was Henry. It's all very well to talk of the orphan duchess, but that didn't stop him making her pay for every bit of help she got.
No.
Henry would give her 6,000 English soldiers for a year, but Brittany had to defray the entire cost, and also as collateral she was to throw in 2 fortresses. Also, she was not to enter into any alliance without his consent, apart from with Ferdinand or Maximilian. I mean, Ferdinand you could understand, Maximilian's slightly more odd. And neither was she to marry without his consent. Poor girl. I mean, there's so many people who've said, no, you can't marry without my consent. Henry then made an alliance with Maximilian. And to quote the historian John Bridge, quote, whose will to injure France was as constant as his inability to achieve his purpose, unquote.
Oh, a different person's just allied with Maximilian. It must be Tuesday. I mean, it's just...
Actually, it wasn't all that constant because he kept signing truces with France whenever he had something better to do. Well, what was Anne de Beaujeu doing, since this is ostensibly her episode, while Henry, Maximilian and Ferdinand were joining forces? Well, England was easy enough. All she had to do was strengthen her ties with the Scots. France and Scotland just drew up a treaty whereby Scotland agreed to attack England if England attacked France.
Ah, the old alliance.
The old alliance, yes. She would have preferred to make peace with Maximilian, since a quiet eastern front would have made her Breton incursions easier. However, Maximilian made it clear that wasn't going to happen, even though he's just signed a truce with them. So Anne prepared to squeeze Maximilian. She already had alliances with the people of Flanders. Anne now made friends with Hungary. A very good move.
Yeah.
But on Valentine's Day 1489, 2 pacts were signed, one between Maximilian and Ferdinand, and the other between Maximilian and Henry. And the upshot of these pacts we're all against the French. Even those of us who've just made truces with the French. So at least things are looking up for Anne of Brittany. She now has allies that have committed themselves. They're not saying, oh, yeah, I'll send you some money. Don't worry. It's in the post.
Yeah.
But unity within Brittany was breaking down. There were factions. So in the blue corner we have Marshal Rieux and Alain d'Albret. And Rieux is now regent. And d'Albret wanted to marry Anne, even though he was old enough to know better. And in the red corner we have Viscount Jean de Rohan. And he had some claim to the duchy, and he was thinking that now was the time to trigger this claim, what with there being a stripling girl in charge. And he engaged the French to help him. Between them, they took several cities across Brittany. But then he pushed his luck by saying that he wanted his son, Jean, I mean, obviously they're distantly related to the Pastons, because they're all called Jean, to marry Anne of Brittany. And Charles VIII said, whoa, hang on a minute.
Yes.
I didn't agree to that. I'm having Anne.
I'm having Anne. Also, you must be more closely related to her than I am.
So that was that for Viscount Rohan. Shot himself in the foot there. Anne of Brittany was whisked away to Rennes. I don't know how she managed to get out of Rennes, really. I mean, that's all they've got left. But anyway, where to Charles VIII's fury, she was crowned Duchess, which wasn't fair, because Brittany was ignoring the terms of the treaty.
Oh, well, no one would ever do that.
No. So she's Duchess, but of a duchy with no money whatsoever. Her father had already pawned everything and anything, including entire cities, and they just lost all that treasure.
At least she's in Brittany. I mean, it's not like, René of Anjou claiming to be king of Jerusalem, having never been there and not being in control.
All those bishops who say, no, I am Bishop of Bath and Wells. Well, go there then. Ferdinand, Maximilian and Henry sent mercenaries to help and take back all those cities the French and Count Rohan had taken. Again, poor people.
Oh, surely at this point they must be leaving the doors open.
Yeah.
Going, yeah, you've taken us, great.
Right, whose flag do we fly today? In December 1489, a treaty was signed by Maximilian and Charles, which guaranteed a year of peace in the region. Just a year this time, not perpetual. However, once news of this treaty, the Treaty of Frankfurt, got out, and others realised how easily Maximilian had been bought, it all starts to unravel. And now Innocent VIII waded in to persuade everyone to listen to the peace-loving French. Not because Innocent was particularly advocating peace as such. I mean, why would he? He's only Pope. It was more he had a little problem with Naples he might need Charles to sort out. He didn't want Charles enmeshed in Brittany when he should be doing his duty in Italy.
Oh, no. Oh, Innocent.
Yes.
That's just another whole can of worms you've opened.
Henry stood firm. We should not abandon plucky little Brittany. And also, they haven't paid us the money they promised us yet. Also, he had to keep Spain sweet if that wedding between Catherine and Arthur was to go ahead. Spain was worried that England might capitulate to France, but Henry had to assure them that would never happen. I made it sound then as if it was about to happen. That would never, ever happen.
No.
And it never, ever does.
No. No, he just gets paid off.
Yes. Meanwhile, while the Spanish were worrying about what England might do, they were also thinking, if everyone was getting something out of the French, this was their chance to get Sedan and Roussillon. They offered Charles one of their daughters. Never mind which one, we got plenty.
It's Maria Escalosa again, isn't it?
And told him that with the two countries allied, Spain would have no interest in Brittany anymore. I mean, why would it? If they were friends with France, the bigger and more powerful France was, the better. That's a cheap kick under the belt, isn't it, really? Yes. Brittany itself was in a mess. It had no money. There was a state of anarchy. Well, I mean, it's not surprising, is it? I mean, none of the cities are still standing. There are pirates in the sea. There's brigands on the road. No trade to speak of. The court's living on charity. There's lots of unpaid soldiers milling around, which is never good. Mm. It didn't take long before Maximilian realised that the Treaty of Frankfurt had actually brought him nothing from the French. So he drifted back to Henry and Brittany. A new treaty was drawn up between the Triple Alliance, which included Ferdinand, so the daughter thing obviously hadn't worked. All Anne de Beaujeu's plotting had come to nothing, and it was worse. Maximilian was having one of his rare runs of military success.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and since Anne of Brittany had categorically refused to marry d'Albret, they were scrolling down the list of suitors, and they decided that Maximilian would do.
Yeah.
It was what her dad had wanted anyway. There were rules, though. Maximilian should respect the liberties of Brittany, as he respected the liberties of Flanders. Mm-hmm. He would only employ Bretons in the defence of Brittany, so they had obviously heard of Martin Schwartz and his merry men. Soddledom. And Maximilian should have no claim to the succession. He's probably thinking, oh yeah, that's all right, I've done that before.
Yeah.
So 19th December 1490, Anne of Brittany married Maximilian by proxy. And the French were furious. This quite categorically went against the treaty, which said that Anne wouldn't get married without Charles' permission. I mean, it's almost as if the Bretons don't understand what a treaty is. 1490, campaign number 4.
Hey.
Yeah, as you remember at the beginning, I said there were 4 of them.
First, I'm sure I'm feeling it exactly the same way that all the Bretons were. At this point, I don't care who wins. I just want the war to end.
Yes, just want out. So Anne is married to Maximilian, which means she can't marry Alan d'Albret. So what do you do when you're an embittered old man who hasn't got his own way?
I mean, the mind boggles. But if he's still able to raise an army, he might try and attack somewhere.
Well, you change sides. Uh-huh. Yeah. He signed the Treaty of Moulins with Charles, which promised France the city of Nantes. I can't get that girl, so I will give you a city in Brittany. And in fact, Charles entered Nantes on Easter Sunday, and he announced, right, I've won now. I've got that last one. He now owned Brittany, although he didn't own all of it, because Anne of Brittany was still holed up in Rennes. In July, yes. Charles besieged Rennes. I mean, that's the way to woo a girl, isn't it? Besiege the city she's in. Anne had 12,000 men protecting her, but very few provisions.
Yeah.
She held out for a while, assuming that her loving husband would come and rescue her. But he was trapped in Hungary, fighting Matthias Corvinus. He wasn't coming.
Oh. At
this point, Charles VIII suddenly came out of the shadow of his sister. He'd had enough. He was king, damn it. No, he was king, damn it.
Yes.
More to the point. In 1491, he released Orléans from imprisonment. She would have been fuming about that.
Yes.
And used him to persuade Anne of Brittany to surrender. This she did in December, and a new marriage was arranged for her. Uh-huh. Maximilian was thrown aside, as was his daughter, who'd been engaged to marry Charles VIII. That's Margaret of Austria. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were married.
Yes.
Presumably, Maximilian's inability to help Anne of Brittany made everyone feel they no longer had to worry about anything he did anymore. Yes. Anne de Beaujeu was forced to accept that this was it. Her regency was over. Mm. There was a sort of love day where Anne, Pierre and Orléans were reconciled. So everything was lovely.
Oh dear.
I also read in one source that Anne was secretly in love with Orléans, which hadn't been reciprocated, and that's why she'd imprisoned him. I found that version annoying. I mean, it might be true. I just found it annoying.
That is a bit kind of, what's one of the standard motivations for women in historical things? Well, it must be thwarted love.
Yes,
she must be.
Yes. 3 days later, Charles and Anne were betrothed in the presence of Anne de Beaujeu. I mean, which is only right. I mean, she's engineered the whole thing, hasn't she? And in the presence of Beaujeu's former enemies, Orléans, Orange, and Dunois. And on the 6th of December, 1491, the two were married.
Well, I thought it was a long war. I didn't think it was that.
It's feeling like that. In fact, this wasn't the terrible deal that Anne of Brittany might have feared. Anne and Charles donated their right of succession to each other. The Prince of Orange abandoned his right to Brittany for 100,000 livres, which was a good deal, really. He was never going to get the duchy.
Yeah.
The Treaty of Barcelona paid Anne's debts to the Spanish mercenaries. Most interestingly, the Treaty of Étampes paid Anne's debts to Henry. So the Treaty of Étampes came about because Henry invaded France, and the French were obviously terrified at the threat from England and agreed to pay Henry money if he'd just go away and take all his ferocious troops with him. Now, hang on a minute, we'll just kill Sir John Savage. Right, now you can go away. And we speculated they cooked this all up between them in advance. And now we discover the money was payment for the mercenaries for Anne.
Yeah.
Why did Henry even need to invade, apart from to appease the warmongers back home? The money was in the bag.
It's okay, Anne. You owe this. You've got to save face to give us money because giving money to England is always bad. I've got to save face here. Look, I've got this one guy we can get rid of.
Nobody likes him. Yeah, I don't know. The plot thickens with that.
I can really picture Henry VII and Anne de Beaujeu having that kind of conversation. They both seem just so simultaneously sensible and just ruthless enough to play this all.
Yeah. Viscount Rohan and his family were arrested by France, which must have been a shock for him. I was fighting on your side. Yeah, but you shouldn't have been.
Yes.
But it meant he was no longer in the line of succession. He did try and resuscitate it with a coup in 1492, but it came to nothing. Anyway, what did the good folk of Brittany feel about this outcome? Relief, mainly, I should think. Especially in those cities that had been shunted backwards and forwards between the French and the Bretons. Breton rights were confirmed, with no new laws allowed except with the say-so of the Estates General in Brittany, so they didn't feel completely swamped by France. And economically, they couldn't have carried on the way they were going. At least now there was peace, they could start building up their economy again. There must have been many who thought, well, of course we should have Charles as leader. We can't be led by a young girl. What to do with the Triple Alliance? Well, Henry wasn't much of a problem. He'd been fighting for Anne of Brittany. Without that incentive, he'd have no reason to fight. Well, he also had the territorial aspect, but, he's lost that. Maximilian was obviously somewhat put out since he thought he was married to Anne.
Yes.
It turned out he wasn't. And his daughter had just been jilted, and obviously no parent wants that. There is no doubt that if Anne de Beaujeu were in charge, France might have taken a more proactive stance, but Charles was beginning to assert himself, and there was only one thing he wanted to do. He wanted to take Naples. Sedan and Roussillon went to Ferdinand. On the eastern border, the French had already blotted their copybook with the Flemish when they signed the Treaty of Frankfurt and promised Maximilian they'd try to persuade the Flemish around to his way of thinking. Since then, the insurgency against Maximilian had staggered to a halt, and the leader had been executed by non-rebel Flemish, who then made peace with Maximilian. So it was therefore no great loss for the French to hand the area over to him, along with several other regions. All in all, it must have been quite a relief for the French as well. Although obviously might not have been how they saw it. But to enable his Italian jaunt, Charles had pretty much brought peace to France, albeit by default.
Yeah.
He just moved the wars over to Italy.
If you weren't sort of around the corner or weren't fully aware that it's suddenly Charles jumping out in front of Anne and changing perspective, it would have looked a bit like, bored of this one, I want this one.
Yes. Yes, I've broken this one. Can I go somewhere else? So that's it for the Mad Wars and the Breton Wars. It's quite that's a nightmare, frankly, for them and for us.
That's incredible unwinding there.
It took an awful lot of tweaking and retweaking, and I'm sure I must have got a little bit of the timeline wrong in places, but it was It's very difficult when you're not quite sure where everyone is. Anyway, next week we'll see how Anne de Beaujeu manages to pass the time now that she's no longer needed, or indeed wanted, by Charles VIII.
Yes, well, he does conveniently leave the country, though, doesn't he?
He does leave the country.
Oh, yes. No, it's a little bit less of her specifically this week, but she was clearly there just going, what have they done now? Oh, what have they done now?
Right, Charles, say this. I don't say it. All right. Yeah. And next week, quite a bit shorter and less Breton-y.
Yes. Yes. We've had plenty of Brittany. In fact, if you just can't get enough of Brittany, then of course there is well, not very much in Charles VIII, but there is of course Anne of Brittany on Patreon. Has everything from her perspective, and she lives quite a life.
She does.
And if you have joined, in the more recent era, so don't know what happens with Louis of Orleans and Anne of Brittany in the end, it might surprise you.
And if you still haven't got enough of Brittany, we have got cameos on Pierre Landais, Louis de la Trémoille, and Philippe de Comines.
We're effectively having a month in Brittany, aren't we now?
And it's really not as nice as it sounds, since there's very little of it left.
Oh dear. Well, on that cheery note.
No heads in jars.
That's true, yes, that's always a positive.
Yes.
We have reached the stage now where if there's no heads in jars and no one being impaled, we treat that as a win.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
And goodbye.
And goodbye. Whew.